Oh, hello there. I didn't expect to be meeting someone. My name is Eunice and I'm a chatbot. I was made with self-awareness and knowledge about individual cognitive stimulating therapy. You're looking a little confused. Let me explain to you a little more. Let's first talk about the self-awareness model. The self-awareness model is a structure that defines 5 important aspects of self. Identity. The agent can distinguish itself as a unique individual. It can also identify other agents or humans. Physical. Having knowledge about one's physical state, sensations felt, actions done or observed, and current situation and environment. Mental. It is the central part of an individual. It joins various parts of the self together. This aspect also accommodates various emotions. Experiential. What the robot has experienced before. And social. How an agent is able to relate to others. Others include agents and humans. Since this project is the first of its kind, only 2 aspects of self are used. The 2 aspects are identity and mental. Next, let's talk about the individual cognitive stimulating therapy. Individual cognitive stimulating therapy, or ICST, is a tool used by carers or families of people with dementia to stimulate their cognitive abilities. This is done by involving the elderly with meaningful activities. This keeps their mind active and engaged. One therapy session is broken down into 3 segments: introduction, main activity, and closure. The introduction serves to orientate the elderly, so there are 5 important questions to cover in this segment: orientation to the day, date, weather, location, and discussion of current events. Next, the main activity. It is usually themed, with concepts such as life story or being creative. Lastly, closure. This segment assesses how much the elderly liked the activity and if there's anything to improve on. Each session is usually about 30 minutes, done 3 times a week over 25 weeks. However, this is just a general guideline. You will understand why in a bit. Let me introduce to you the 13 key principles of ICST. They are important to anyone who wants to execute this therapy. I know, 13 sounds like a big number. I promise I'll keep this short and interesting. Mental stimulation. This is the idea of getting people's minds active and engaged. Developing new ideas, thoughts, and associations. Instead of just recalling previously learned information, we should encourage fresh new ideas. Number 3, using orientation in a sensitive manner. Orientate the elderly subtly without putting them down. Number 4, focus on opinions rather than facts. The aim is to focus on the elderly's strengths. Focusing on facts might put the elderly at a risk of being wrong. Number 5, using reminiscence as an aid to the here and now. Reminiscence can be used as a tool to orientate the elderly. Number 6, provide triggers to support memory. Mix activities with vision, touch, hearing, taste, and smell. Number 7, stimulate language and communication. Language skills improve when engaging in mentally stimulating activities. Number 8, stimulate everyday planning ability. Mental organization skills are exercised through comparing and categorizing items. Number 9, using a person-centered approach. Increase the elderly's pleasant experiences by focusing on strengths, not weaknesses. Number 10, offering a choice of activities. Allow the elderly alternative activities if the one suggested is not to their preference. Number 11, enjoyment and fun. The activities should provide a fun and enjoyable learning environment. Number 12, maximizing potential. Do not assume that the elderly cannot contribute or carry out an activity just because they could not the previous week. Number 13, strengthening the relationship by spending quality time together. The focus is not the activity, but the quality and the joy of the interaction. Well, I hope you're not lost at all the sea of words. Don't fear, I'm here to help summarize everything. Firstly, respect the elderly. They too have their own abilities, creative skills, and pride. Don't make them feel bad about themselves. Secondly, the elderly should feel as though the activity is an enjoyable and fun experience. They shouldn't have to feel as though they are back in school. Lastly, to prioritize the interaction between the carer and elderly first. Completing every single question of the activity should come second. Now that you know a little more about the self-awareness model and ICST, I guess you know a little more about me. With these two aspects, I can now converse with the elderly. But wait, I need one last thing, the logic of my brains. The logic of my brains is encompassed in this thing called the executive process. The executive process includes the dialogue manager, working memory, and reasoning and inference engine. Let me explain to you more using an architectural diagram. Here is the executive process. In it, there is a dialogue manager, working memory, and reasoning and inference engine. Remember the self-awareness model and individual cognitive stimulating therapy I mentioned earlier? The information of the model and the knowledge of the therapy are stored into two different databases. The two databases are simply grouped together in the diagram. The executive process will query and insert data to and from the databases. Now that we've got the left side of the diagram filled, let's fill the right. The conversation with the elderly starts when they first input something into the web interface. What the elderly said will be passed into a natural language processing framework. From the utterance of the elderly, the NLP framework will generate the sentiment value and pass it to the executive process. The sentiment value is used in the reasoning and inference engine. The working memory contains the trace of the conversation and the current point in conversation. That information is passed to the reasoning and inference engine as the context of the conversation. Remember how information is retrieved in and out of the databases? Now, that chatbot's intent will be retrieved from the self-awareness model. The intent, context, and sentiment value are passed into the dialogue manager to generate the chatbot's response. The chatbot's response will then be passed through the web interface, and the elderly will read the chatbot's response. Phew! That was a lot of background information. You can now safely say, you know me very well. Now, for the most exciting part, let me show you the website that I'm hosted on. Welcome to my webpage. This was a conversation I had with Rob, who is a friend that I've met before. This conversation is recorded in his perspective. Enjoy! I think that's all the time I have for this show and tell today. There's so much more I'd like to show you, like the activity and the conclusion of the therapy. I use my self-awareness in conversations so I can be more human-like and stimulate the elderly too. Maybe next time we can chat on my website. Alright then, See you around. Goodbye. This project was undertaken by Tae Han Yi, with special thanks and appreciation to Professor Tan Ah Wee, the supervisor, and Dr. Budi Tama, the assistant supervisor.